is the Rushmore Show, where it's all about your top four and nothing more. Andy, what a great month February was. We are closing that chapter and reopening a new chapter. Now, this new chapter is super exciting because back in March, 1 year ago, we decided to go themed months. And our first themed month ever on the Rushmore Show, and really where we started to consistently have guests, was Music March. And we are back. We are back to tackle some more music. I know you're excited for this.
Dude, this was my probably my favorite month last year.
It's your George of months.
Yes, and it's certainly shaping up to be that way this month too. But let me just say this, Funny February, what a blast. We love laughing. We love comedy. We love all that kind of stuff. If you want to be haunted again, please go back and watch last week's At Least the Stinger. Kirk, you got a lot of explaining to do. You're still in the studio, still rocking the cowbell, man. It is what it is. But it was fun. It was a blast. Great time. Loved all of our guests that we had. A couple first-timers with that as well. But we are moving on, like you said, to Music March. We are just ready to have such a great time. And the run of some first-time guests is not ending just yet.
Last year we did a round of four. We broke down the whole band and built our Rushmore of bands, and we did like the ultra extreme band by putting all those together and making the George of what we thought would be a good band by doing bass, electric guitar, drums, and vocalists. Now this year we were like, well, since we already did that, what could we possibly do for this year to one up it? And we said, let's do eras. And so like decades of music, because what I've learned about goats, Andy, it's really hard. Like this is one of the reasons we started the show. Like, is Tom Brady the GOAT? Or is Michael Jordan the GOAT? Is LeBron the GOAT? Is Patrick Mahomes now the GOAT? Is Wayne Gretzky the GOAT? Is Drew Brees the GOAT, right? We got all these different conversations. But the thing is, 90% of the time, these guys never play each other. They have different rules. They have different styles. They have different equipment. And it's really hard to compare all those. It doesn't change with music. Music, eras change, sounds change, instruments change, the way that we do it. A lot of it's technology now, all based. And so how you play music is different. So we decided, let's see who the best in each decade was. And we are starting off with a banger with the 70s.
Before we get into today's Rushmore, I want to remind you, if you haven't done it yet, subscribe, hit the bell, comment, let us know all of this, your opinions and everything. Like it, share it with your friends, do all that kind of stuff.
Now, Andy, before we jump in, we have one more thing we got to share. This upcoming month, we are invited to be a part of a big event down home, St. Tammany Parish. For you guys that are outside Louisiana, that's a county. So we're going to the St. Tammany Parish, but we're going to be a part of a convention down there. We just found this out. And why don't you share kind of what's going on there?
So we have been invited to come and join and have a table at St. Tammany Collectors Con. It is going to be a fun time. It's basically like a Comic-Con. People dress up in all their stuff, and they have toys that are out there. All the stuff that we talk about in nostalgic cartoons and toys and pop culture and all of that fun stuff. That's going to be happening. They have some super special guests that are going to be there doing some talks and answers.
And we will be going live very often.
We will be live there at the convention.
Doing Rushmores.
Yes.
With the guests.
We're going to bring people to the table. It's going to be just, most of the time we do these Rushmores, we think through them, we do our research. This is going to be on the spot. It's just going to be a blast. So look, if you are in the Louisiana area, it is April 1st and 2nd. We'll put all the information down below. We'll let you know.
About 4 weeks out.
It is going to be a blast. I would encourage you, come out there. I think it's like $20 for the whole day. It's ridiculous. Like it's nothing. So come out there, have fun. Or if you can't be out there, make sure you tune in April. We're going to have some special content for you with all of that. So
come see our new stuff, man. We're going to have a lot of blast. But hey, man, let's jump in because we got a guest. We're holding him. We're keeping him quiet. And I know he wants to tell us some Rushmores. I know he wants to jump in this thing. It's time for your Rushmore of 70s bands.
Come on.
Get it. All right, Rushmore Show, it is time. I am so excited. This is one of my favorite months of the year because I love music, and it is time to jump in and see what your favorite 70s bands are. Now, look, do me a favor. I know some of you are born way before the 70s, winking at you there, buddy, but you know who I'm talking about. But most of you guys, most of our fans are millennials, they're Gen Xers, they're Gen Zers. They are a little bit younger generation. So the 70s isn't always maybe on something that you guys rock, but I know you know these bands. I know you know these songs. You can come up with a top four. Don't forget to drop it down low. Now, with that being said, Andy, we have an amazing guest today. We have been going down Cadre Row.
Yeah.
And bringing on every single Cadre person we can, which is a huge commercial for that. Who decided to bless us tonight?
So today we are going to bring on, just like you said, a Cadre. Do we call him alum? It's not over yet, but a Cadre man joining us today. Gaffar. What is up, man? Dude, so excited for you to be on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Gaffar, you are a part of Omari's church, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So, everybody, we've had Omari on the show 2 times. Go back and check out Mr. Hot Take.
I'm sorry.
Gaffar gets blessed with him every single week. Every week at church, he gets to hang out with
Omari gets blessed with me every
there you go. There you go.
That is straight.
So, yeah, welcome to the show, Gaffar. And, man, tell us about your love of music. Why the 70s?
Oh man, I've been loving music since I was 7. Like now was that was 97. I heard a jazz song, made me cry. I was like, man, music is awesome. And my dad, he came from Nigeria, and every time that he would sit down on the weekend, he would just put on music 24/7 from Friday all day, Saturday to Sunday at 9. So I've just been listening. And whenever we're in the car, he's like, let's do this smooth jazz. It started coming out in the 70s. It's like with Spiral Gyra. Who else am I thinking? Chuck Mangione. You're looking at George Benson as well. So it's like, I got a lot of it in here. This guy behind me, can't see him because I'm in front of his head. He can't see me either. But anyway, I love this. I love music. I love the 70s. That's for you, Stevie. So, yeah.
So also you do some worship at your church too, right? So you are musically talented as well. So talk about that for a minute.
I guess I'm a little bit of a bias towards music because I'm an ordained youth worship pastor, but I do handle a lot of stuff. I've been playing music since I was 10, started with the violin to now I know how to play like electric guitar, acoustic, drums, bass, keys. I sing. I do a lot of stuff and I just love it. I play it every Sunday, but then with other bands, music is life. If I don't have it, I'm dead. Now, obviously, I'm alive, so it's still here.
So why the 70s?
You know, there's something about the 70s that is just always timeless and classic, and not just because it's like classic rock. It's like the melodies in it just started so many genres of different music afterward in the 80s, 90s. I mean, you can trace back like what neo soul is or lo-fi hip hop today to certain early elements of R&B, certain big hits like like there's a guitar player right now called Corey Wong, and some of just even his like guitar funk playing is like reminiscent of things I've heard in the 70s or different recording techniques. There's all the nerdy things about it that's super great. So it's just, and plus, I'm like, I got an afro, and I'm like, if I could grow it out bigger and just walk around with the big old platform shoes, that's what
I car wash?
Yes.
Working at the car wash. Oh.
Exactly. That would be me.
Oh, man. Oh, that's awesome. Well, Gaffar, excited for you to be on the show. Let's go ahead and hop into our Rushmores. But Gaffar, we're going to let you go first. We always let the guests go first. Before you tell us your Rosie and where you're starting your list, this obviously you know a lot about 70s, a lot about music and that. And with that said, and with every decade we're going to talk about this month, there's a million to pick from. So how were you able to eventually narrow it down to 4? Like, what's your thought process? Maybe your criteria? What were you thinking?
In the moment, I'm like, who is it that I've listened to recently that I'm like, all right, let me think through. Playing with a couple of local bands as well. Like, there's a few other groups that we've been playing, like some Leonard Skinner, some Led Zeppelin, Creedence Clearwater, like just kind of throwing them out because we're playing. But to start off, I would probably say my Rosie. I'm looking at the Allman Brothers Band. I'd say.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
it's like
Bro.
I at first I was like I don't know, but when because I honestly just started listening to them the last 2 years, but like Midnight Rider, Rambling Man, Blue
Mm,
Sky, there's some like amazing until like until Dwayne Allman passed, but it's like there was some amazing guitar work of like dual guitar stuff. I
mm.
think of Thin Lizzy, but it's like the Allman Brothers Band was just the group that just did it so well that it was just like, man, this is beautiful stuff.
I
And you
love
can,
that. Yeah, you talk about the dueling guitars, and you said Ramblin' Man, and immediately my head's already the.
yeah,
I'm hearing the legs.
I'm on a rambling
Dude,
man.
great pick, man.
Dude, I
Surprised.
can't
I
hear
like.
that song without transporting right to Old Town in Slidell and
Dang,
being
I
in
know what
like
slide that
timeout.
is.
And that, I mean, that song, that is one of those, that's what I'm talking about. That's one of those songs that made me love the 70s. Like you hear that, you're like, who is this? I don't know who this is. This is way before my time. And then you start to enjoy music and it's just one of those classics,
Mm-hmm.
right? Ramblin' Man. But as a band, they're phenomenal. They're great. They're kind of underrated, which I love that you threw them out there because they're not like what I would consider if you were going to throw the mega 70s concert, like they're opening, right? Or they're
Yeah,
like in the early half.
I can
Like
see that.
they're not the headliners, but I'm going to any Allman Brothers band that concert that shows up. I mean, I'd go to a cover band that's the
Mm.
Gallman Brothers. I'm going to check them out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
the Coleman brother.
yeah, I don't know where that came from, but yeah, anyways, I love the Allman Brothers. It's a good pick.
Yeah,
That
they
is
got like
fantastic.
just a great sound overall. That it's like you could sit, like you just said, put them on, and listen to. You're driving or it's outside, warm, sunny day. It's just chilling.
Mm. Yeah, and from a musician, this makes sense. That is a great. I mean, every member of that band, like, is up there in the top of their game. With
Hmm.
oh, it's really good, man. I love the pick. Allman Brothers starting us off strong.
All right, Andy. Well, now it's your turn, and tell everybody what you were thinking about Rosie. You're the music guy on the panel for sure, as far as me and you go. I love music. You live music. What were you thinking? Where are you going? How's that rolling? You may be showing one of your cards or two of your cards, but yeah, where are you going?
Yeah, we'll say that for later. My criteria, what I was thinking. Okay, there are a lot of groups, and we've kind of talked about this, and we'll probably encounter this on multiple episodes this month. That there's groups and artists that span multiple decades, but for my own purposes, I'm going to limit them to 1 decade, and that decade is going to be it's the immediate reaction when I think of this band. This is the decade that I think of them in. Like it's just where I go. Maybe most of their hits that are near to me, or maybe it's where they kind of got their start in a little bit. And actually, some of the groups that I'm going to talk about today actually technically got their start in the '60s, the late '60s. But we're talking like 1968, 1969. We can round that up to the '70s, right? So and Gafar and I were kind of talking about this before, and this may not make sense to everyone, but to me, when I think of a decade, let's just say the '70s for today, the '70s are much more than just those calendar years that they
Hmm.
account for. There's a whole culture, there's a whole just feel of the '70s that is what I think of. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's where I was thinking with '70s. Even with that said, it was very difficult to narrow it down to 4. So I thought of, I mean, there's two that were cemented in my list. My George and my Link, without a doubt, are my 1 and 2, and it doesn't change from there. So I really had 2 that I had to fill the rest with. So with that said, I'm going to start with my Rosie This is actually this group actually started the earliest out of all of the groups. Got their start in 1965. Technically, we can round that up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the name of the group, and I'm going to give you just some of their hits from the 70s. You know, obviously they're going to all of my groups span multiple decades, so that just is what it is. My Rosie, my number 4, coming in strong with Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd. I love Pink Floyd. Now here's the thing. Let me give you a couple songs. Money, come on, Money. That whole intro with like the cash register, like how cool, and that bass line is sick. And Money. Anyway, Comfortably Numb, Wish You Were Here, Echoes, Another Brick in the Wall, Shine On You Crazy Diamond. They're just great hits from the 70s from Pink Floyd. Obviously, again, they span from 65 to 1994. So a long time there. But when I'm just thinking 70s, they are there for sure. You know, I had to throw this in there. Good friend of mine, Blake Searle, watches the show sometimes. He's a big Pink Floyd fan. I had to fit him in there too. But here's the other thing I think. Gafar, kind of like you said, or like I talked about with the Allman Brothers, like the musicianship. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things about music, and I'm going to nerd out for a minute, but is the artistry of music. Like, it's not full blast the whole time. Like, there is dynamics. It's like they're painting a picture with their song that they put together. And to me, not many groups do it better than Pink Floyd does. It's a whole masterpiece that they put these things together. Their music videos, you know, you talk about some of that stuff that they do, the whole, you know, Another Brick in the Wall or Dark Side of the Moon, like all of that kind of stuff, like that just visual. You see their live shows and like the light shows that they do. Just everything is, and it's kind of like what Pink Floyd makes me think of is, and maybe I'm kind of looking forward to like the 90s, 2000s. I was a big Tool fan. They remind me of like pre-Tool, like very methodical music that they put together with there's thought in every note that they hit. And I just love Pink Floyd. I could not have them on the list. My Rosie, my number 4, Pink Floyd.
Yeah, man. I can remember 8th grade. So 8th grade, and I might have this wrong as far as the title, but I think it's Division Bell came out right around the 90s and or 89. Like, it was one of their last ones. Like, I think it was called Division Bell. Why is that ringing a bell? But anyways, it was like the half heads cut in half and all that. But I remember being in 8th grade and a buddy of mine had that album, and I'm like, what in the heck do you have this for? Like, Pink Floyd? That's the most ridiculous name. It's dumb. And they're like, oh man, these guys are a classic. And I remember like listening to them and being like, this is mesmerizing. Like, first off, the music was made not to be sober. Okay. It was made not to be sober, or under the influence, I should say. They're masters of their craft. I also remember, have you ever seen when they put the wall up to Wizard of Oz?
Yes.
Dude, I watched it one time while I was in college. Somebody put that thing together. I don't remember where it came from, if it was like a VHS tape or whatever, but it was always like this like myth, like that's not true. But like almost all of Wizard of Oz you can play is it Another Brick in the Wall, like whatever that album is, and like Money, when the cash register hits, it's like the door opening for the wizard, like all that stuff like goes in like, and they thought through that. And then just The Wall, let's just talk about The Wall. If that ain't trippy enough, the movie, that's trippy enough. But just great band. This is, again, you always do this, Andy, you always find a way to pick my first Benjamin. So this is my number 5. Thank you for putting that in there. But this is my number 5. Great band. I can't applaud it more. Tons of hits. And Waters was amazing. Like, I love that guy to death. But yeah, good pick.
I don't know how to say this right, but they were one of mine. So I was just like, I knew it. As soon as you said they started in 1965, I was like, I know exactly who you saying. So, but because like you said, nerding out the musicality of it, with David Gilmour, like
Mhm.
playing, because I'm a big electric player as well, going like watching how people try to get his signal chain of going into a tape head. I think it's a Benson tape head or an Echo Ray. I could be wrong, and that's fine. But into a, what is the amp? It's anyway, into a super clean amp. It's like everything, but then the fuzz used, and for the solo of Comfortably Numb, as
Oh,
well
dude.
as some of the other stuff. It's just like I've never been under the influence, so it's just like without that, it's just like having moments where you just close your eyes and you listen to it. It's just like it takes you somewhere, and
Yeah.
that's like a really great epitome of like a good band, like you said, that just like goes beyond just what the decade is. It's like you can listen to them now and hear something musically.
Mm.
They're also kind of like you said, like math rock ish, kind of like the help progressed prog and everything.
Mm.
They were kind of like forefront with that. In concept albums as well, like following after the Beatles and doing stuff. So just fantastic.
So I already made a change. I already made a change.
Yeah, I love it.
I made my first change already, and it wasn't a big change. I shifted a band that I was gonna say for my Rosie, and I shifted it to next week's show. I think I shifted it to next week.
Oh,
Okay.
spanning the decades. I got it.
I'm going to probably move that band to next week because it's just your criteria. I was listening to your criteria and I was like, I think this is probably more of an 80s than a 70s. But there are several bands that do this and kind of span the decades and go across. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, well, what were their hits? Because that's what you said. What were their hits? And all the hits that I love are actually in the 80s. So I decided to move on
Okay.
and bring up what was gonna be my number 5, which then Pink Floyd was number 6, which moved to number 5. So shockingly, this band should not be on off anybody's mountain. It should be on everybody's mountain. But everybody's different. I'm going with a band from 1970, but I'm going to bring in. I think they had a revival back in the 90s because of one amazing movie, your favorite movie there, Andy, Wayne's World. But I'm going with none other than Queen with Freddie Mercury. Freddie Mercury, I had him on my vocalists. I will just go out and say Queen is. Yeah. When you think of rock and especially the 70s, they come into mind. When you think of vocalists, Freddie's one of the best, right? He was on several of your mountains back in last year's March. But their hits, I mean, most of them are in the 70s, or many of them are in the 70s, but they also have 80s hits as well. They went all the way until what? I think Freddie died in 91, and now they've done a few other things. And I mean, they had several different people try and replace them, and I don't think any of them are anywhere close. I mean, Adam Lambert's, I guess, okay, but he's definitely not Freddie Mercury. But Bohemian Rhapsody, We Will Rock You, Killer Queen, Keep Yourself Alive, We Are the Champions. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. These guys are phenomenal artists. We mentioned in the concerts, right? Bucket lists. If Freddie was still alive, this definitely would have been on a bucket list because I heard that they tore the house down with their shows. Like they were just amazing. And I heard Freddie, I mean, this is just kind of the lore, was that Freddie was just as good live as he was in studio. And so he just an amazing voice. And I couldn't have a list without him. And I'm pretty excited about moving my other band the next week. So allowing them to get on. So anyways, my Rosie coming up and really hot with Queen.
Just like I did for you, you're doing for me. You took my 5. You took my number 5. Surprisingly, not on the Rushmore, but it was definitely my number 5 in Benjamin's. Yeah, every reason you said Queen. I mean, come on. I mean, how do you get through talking about 70s music without mentioning them? Just fantastic. So many anthemic hits that are just like there. I mean, so I think of this like. I think maybe I've shared this story before, and it's kind of funny, but like when the Saints won the Super Bowl, I remember driving to Slidell to try to go to We Are the Champions came on the radio. For the first time in my life, I understood that song. I felt I was part of that song.
Queen, man. Gafar, you like Queen?
Oh yes, I really do. Freddie Mercury is one of a kind. I mean, when you hear his voice, and then I don't know if you guys did see the like kind of biopic Bohemian Rhapsody. I thought it was a cool movie. I thought it
Yeah,
was really good, but
I
then like
I did like it. I think they did a good job.
yeah, and then remembering like the concert at the end, like when he got up there and just like how they showed that in the movie, but then like when you go back and listen to it, it's just like that man could belt out some tunes, like
Yeah.
sing like nobody's business. He just was great. Whole band was great. Like
All right, Queen. Great pick, Kirk. We are moving to the next step of our Rushmore Gafar. This is the one we like to call TJ Jazzy Jeff, or Thomas Jefferson, who we think is the third most important on the Rushmore. We made that call. Where are you going next in the 70s?
so, I've got a band that I know everybody has heard in some way, shape, or form. You know, whether it be on movie trailers or something else. You may have heard it like in the gym when you're working out. And I'll just do one of the lines that you hear to open the song. Ah, ah, bring it in for TJ Jazzy Jefferson, Led Zeppelin.
Come on, great pick.
Let me just
Let's go.
they like I think of people who are forefront in a lot of stuff of just how rock is today. I think of like bands like Switchfoot, or there's a band I listen to now called AWOL Nation, or if you look at other ones from the 90s that people will be like, man, Led Zeppelin is who inspired me. Jimmy Page is who inspired me specifically. Going through, I believe, a Marshall, he played some Supros, Gibson Les Pauls, but hearing his tone, hearing how raw it is, how Robert Plant's voice was, John Bonham on the drums, everybody just being like, I'm trying to think of like Whole Lot of Love. When you think of like Immigrant Song, like I was saying, but then the classic one that everybody really loves, Stairway to Heaven.
No stairway. Denied.
Every like hearing it start off, and then when it just kicks in, it's fantastic.
I will withhold my comments on this pick for reasons, but I will tell you I wholeheartedly agree with everything you're saying right now. Kirk, do you have anything to add?
I mean, it's a great band. They are phenomenal. You go back to last year for us, many of these pieces made that mountain, made specific mountains. Andy had a couple on his, but there were a few out there. I mean, they're just amazing. I mean, Paige and all those guys. But I know that we'll probably chat about him a little later. We'll probably chat. Well, I'm sure that we're chatting later about that. Because I mean, yeah, they're pretty awesome. I'm surprised. I'm surprised how your list is going there, Gafar, and I like it. I like
Right.
it. Little almond, little yeah. I'm anxious to see 1 and 2. But we'll see. We'll see.
I don't want to let you down, but it's like I have to.
We,
I have
we
to
will
pay
see,
homage.
but they might not see. I mean, like, I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, yeah. I know Stevie ain't seeing. I mean, Ray Charles neither. They ain't gonna see this.
All right,
Oh my God.
Andy, TJ, Jazzy Jeff. You going with Jefferson Starship, Jefferson Airplane?
Never going to do those things.
Oh, okay. So where are you going?
Afternoon delight. No, we're not doing that. So for my TJ Jazzy Jeff, definitely not one of those we just said, but man, this list just keeps getting hot. And this band was one of the big influences when I started getting into playing music. Gafar, you can probably attest to this. This band has one of those riffs that is one of the first ones you learn playing guitar, learning power chords and learning all that kind of stuff, trying to figure it out. My TJ Jazzy Jeff, Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, you know what we're talking about. So we got the song Black Sabbath, NIB,
Crazy.
we got War Pigs, Paranoid, Iron Man, Sweet Leaf, Children of the Grave. It goes on. Like, so many big hits. You've got Tony Iommi, who, okay, so here's the thing. Like, you hear this freak accident he has. He's They're in London. He's working in like this steel shop or something, cuts the tip of his finger off. So what does he have to do to continue playing guitar? He has to detune it so that it's less tension on his finger, not knowing that this creates a whole genre of music. Like, these are the fathers of heavy metal, with that detuned guitar, all because of this accident. So when you talk about iconic sounds, tones, iconic, just what they did for music, Black Sabbath is one of those top ones, right? Then, okay, so you've got Geezer Butler, right? You've got all of these guys. And then, oh yeah, who's the singer? Ozzy freaking Osbourne, right? Like, I mean, come on, man. So this band, one of the most influential, one of the greatest of all times, Black Sabbath. I think about this too. So I've shared this testimony before, and you shared about Pink Floyd. When I used to live a life when I did not do things the right way. We'll just say that.
Yeah.
I was under the influence at times. And there is a subgenre sort of rock music, which is called stoner rock. That's what it's called. And whether you are into that like lifestyle or not, like, the music's really cool. Like, it's just really good. The tone of the guitars and everything is just super cool. And who started that? That all comes back to Black Sabbath. That's literally every band that you hear that does that. It's like, yeah, they're just ripping off Black Sabbath. Like, you think about like Queens of the Stone Age. That's another big band that came out. Exactly. And a lot of what they do wouldn't happen had it not been for pioneers like Black Sabbath. So, I mean, how many genres and different sounds and things that they were pioneers of? You can't have this list without talking about Black Sabbath.
Yeah, I was going to talk about them, but just not in my top four. I mean, they're definitely in my, I'd say, top 10 or so. And again, if I had the background you did, I would really, really love them. I love songs of theirs, one or two. You know, I love Iron Man. That's just a classic to me. Paranoid, I remember listening to that over and over and over again on the Dazed and Confused soundtrack.
Yes.
Right? So with Foghat and all those guys, you know, Lowrider and all that. But so I love that song, but I never really was an Ozzy fan, if you will, when I was younger. Ozzy is a really big influence on a lot of people. Black Sabbath, it just wasn't my jam. I do like them. And so when I was starting kind of liking classic rock, I wasn't really into the heavy side. I mean, we've talked about it with a couple other bands. Like a band that I would say is more 90s, you're going to say is more 80s, and that's because of the two different styles that they had. Yeah. And that's just how it is. That's just how it was. And for me, I liked a lot of what Ozzy did. And but he wasn't an influence on me. I wasn't a musician, and I didn't even realize all the kind of people that you're talking about that like actually took things from him. Because again, not being a musician, but man, you have to give him his credit where it's due. And I mean, he even invented reality TV. So
perfected it.
Perfected it, I guess. Yeah, I mean, we could have done without it. But anyways, man, Black Sabbath, good job. Good pick.
Gafar, what's your thoughts on that one?
When Ozzy like kind of had left Black Sabbath and, you know, he was with Randy Rhoads, then of course hearing Crazy Train, I'm like, oh wow, this is dope. It wasn't until I turned maybe 25, between 25 and 27, that I heard Queens of the Stone Age. And that's when I was like, wow, this sound is awesome. And a friend of mine was like, like you basically said, it's like, oh, it's just similar to what Black Sabbath was doing. So I was like, what you mean? And to know that Tony Iommi was one of the first ones going through a Matador amp, I think, tuning down to C sharp standard. Like, I have a guitar that I have tuned to C standard just because I like stoner rock. And it's weird to say as a black man who's like, I love stoner rock. It's like, yeah, that's something music is musically good. And it's just like, you can do some things that are bluesy within it that will just have a whole different feel. You can do things that are heavy that is like,
it's so weird. Like, people don't see this unless you're like in music and you get it. Like, heavy metal draws a lot of influence from blues in the early
Very much,
right?
very
Like,
much so.
I mean, that's where it comes from. So
what's the story of like the persona that they put on, right? Where it's like biting bats
I
and
knew.
killing rats and this crazy. Like I can't imagine if they were doing blues that's what they would have.
no,
Right.
and that became a shtick. It's shock rock, man. I mean, that's what
Right. I mean, I was just wondering, like, if you read the story or like why they decided that. Like, I got an idea. Why don't we?
they were just punk kids, man. Like
Yeah.
doing something ridiculous. That's that's what it's all about. And look, that stuff has been influential going down. Like there's so many other groups. We talked about like getting into the 90s with Marilyn Manson and 2000s with Mudvayne and Slipknot and stuff. Like they draw all that from just the crazy personas. Now, Sabbath is very tame compared to a lot of that stuff, but it started there. And I think that's why
I remember like parents being freaked out about it. Like,
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
So this guy bit the head off of whatever on the stage. He's kicking cats. He's throwing babies. I don't know. He's doing all kinds of stuff.
I don't want to send my kids to that concert. I'm just being honest with you. Like,
Watch out, he's throwing babies.
Anyway, so Black Sabbath, that's where we're at there. Kirk, let's move to you.
All right. So I'm going to go. I'm going to come in hot again, man. I mean, actually, all four of these are hot. They can go in any direction. Just really depends on it really just depends on what your taste is, where you want to be. Now, look, this particular band started in 1968, but honestly, most of the hits that we all love were in the early 80s, but I still consider them a 70s band. And I'm going with the trio that we love to call Rush.
Nice.
And I am going with none other than Geddy, Neil, and Alex. Man, these three guys, all of them put together were on Mountains last year. All of them are amazing. They are Neil Peart might be one of the greatest. I mean, he was my Georgia drummers, but one of the greatest drummers to ever sit behind a percussion all the way back when you were beating on coconuts. I mean, like this guy knows what just percussion sounds like. And then Geddy Lee was fighting for top spots in bass, and even Alex Lifeson was talking about electric guitar. Now, all of the main hits that I love happened on that 81 basically album, right? Tom Sawyer and all that. But they still have some really amazing hits all the way from 68 through. Their story is amazing. The one of the best documentaries on music I've ever seen is kind of watching their story and learning how they all came together and just like their parents kind of like the conversations that they had, like, you're going to be a rock star and all this, and they blew up, and they had such a great sound, like that electronic synthesizer kind of coming in the 80s, leaving the 70s. I always think of like some real old 70s films when I hear it, and to me, I had to have it on my mountain. Honestly, it was just a matter, are you going to be 1, 2, or 3? And so I'm going to roll my TJ Jazzy Jeff with Rush. Yeah.
Great pick. I'll say this, and I'll give it away. They didn't make my list today because of what you just said. Because and listen, there are great. Fly By Night is fantastic. Like that, there's great songs from the 70s from Rush. But when I think Rush, we'll talk about it next week. But that's just where I'm at. But
listen, I didn't even honestly, until looking this up, I didn't even think. I thought all those songs were in the 70s.
Yeah.
And I had to look them up and go, oh, well, those songs are 70s, are early 80s. And I'm like, yeah, but it's still a 70s band. They were in classic rock before I even knew. I had the greatest hits in the late 80s, and I thought it was a freaking 70s and 60s album. I'm telling you, like, but anyways, I don't consider it 80s.
Working Man, like a lot of great 70s hits. So I'm cool with it. I would not complain about that. I would ride with that all day. Just for my criteria,
Yep.
doesn't work today.
Yeah, but you also said, just saying, you also said that 70s isn't just the date; it bleeds over.
I can see that. I can see that. But then I think too, when you brought up synthesizer and like that's a big sound of theirs, that moves it into the 80s culture to me. And it's just me again. It's criteria.
Yeah, well, I think of like old 70s science fiction movies though.
Okay.
Like Logan's Run, right? And those kind of things. That's the kind of vibe that it had in the background, like old Bond and old like 70s, like even what you see behind Gafar there, those kind of whatever. That's kind of how I would interact watching some of these videos. But I get it, man. I know that's one of your jams, and well, I guess we're gonna revisit them next week. But hey, that's on my job.
I think this too. Let me just the last thing I want to say about this, and I want to hear Gafar what you have to say about Rush. I think that speaks volumes for how great this group is. They could make a 70s Rushmore. They could make an 80s. And for diehard fans, they can make a 90s and 2000s. Like every week this month.
Well, all the way up till Neil Peart died, right? They were banging the United States. They were global. They're going all over the place. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they were still. When was the concert you saw them?
2017, I think.
2017.
Yeah.
Man. And they started in 68.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's insane.
It was their 40th year. It was their 40th year anniversary. So maybe it was 2018. It was the Rush 40. It was our 40. So anyway, great time.
Anyways, so that's my TJ Jazzy Jeff. Gafar, what do you think about Rush?
I have not listened to Rush as much, but like, I've listened to Tom Sawyer, YYZ. So it's like when you think about that, and because of being a musician, I'm always thinking of like, what kind of things did these people do that helped to start trends? And they were also huge into prog. I will say it's like playing Guitar Hero, like, Guitar Hero 3, they were on there. And just thinking of like, even talk about the synth stuff and all, it's like towards the end of the 70s, beginning, like throughout all the 80s, it's like that's when synth started getting into there. But to have intricacy in like what Geddy Lee plays on the bass and what Alex was doing on the guitar and everything else, even with Neil just like on the snare, everything was like timed in YYZ, and it was just like the way that it like went through. It's just like I'm not mad at them at all, because it's like the 70s is where, or what I'll say is like every generation has something, or genre, decade has a bunch of other things, but it's like 60s is where like you see this explosion of like songwriting creativity in a different way of like songs coming out. And I feel like the 70s is where you have an expression of how music just shifts even more. Like because we start getting the Moog that was created, and you start using that theremins, all these other synths that you use. I don't know if Arturio was around then, but a lot of stuff that's starting to be used in music to be more than just like soundtracks for movies or other stuff, that it becomes a part of a staple of like what you take in. So it's like, that's really cool. Like thinking about that and how they took that and like progressive rock, how it just built in the 70s and just grew. It's just like, I have a big appreciation for the musicality of everything.
Well, we have made it halfway through our mountains, Kirk. You know what that means it's time for, right?
It's time for a commercial break.
It's intermission time. Time for refreshment. During the next 10 minutes, you're invited to visit the refreshment stand, where you'll be greeted with fast, friendly service. You'll find hot dogs, juicy hamburgers, and mouth-watering delicious pizza. There are refreshing hot and cold beverages, ice-cold cola, and orange drink. Goes great with an order of crispy French fries. Then there's a wide selection of your favorite candies and other delicious snacks. And there's always a fresh batch of hot buttered popcorn to go with the rest of the show. So visit the refreshment stand now during this 10-minute intermission and add to your enjoyment of the movie. We're happy to have you with us tonight and hope you'll come back often.
Welcome back to the Rushmore Show. And
welcome back.
Yeah, there we go.
Welcome back.
So let's continue this 70s train, the soul train going. I had said that. Let's continue that.
Train.
With Gafar, where are you going to go for Link? Link is our next on the list, number 2.
You know, you mentioned Soul Train, and I don't know about y'all. I saw reruns as a kid, and all the time seeing them get up there and just like dancing, and then Soul Train lines and everything. And I was just talking about musicality, so I've got to say the link for my link number 2 for me. I'm going Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh,
do you remember?
Come on, man.
The 21st of December.
Hey,
dude, I'm so glad. It's been in my head for like an hour now.
I have to. So I remember.
It might be, and listen, it might be one of the best songs ever. Not my favorite, just the best. Like I can never hear that song and be in a bad mood. Ever.
Period. Like
my 5-year-old loves that song.
You can play that. I feel like you could play that at a funeral and people would start crying. And then, do you remember? Yes, I do. The 21st night. And start dancing. And it's just like people just start dancing around the sanctuary. That's my thought.
Man, I love some Earth, Wind, and Fire.
So talk about them. Why you love them so much?
I love the I don't even know how to say it, but the inclusion of just kind of like Afro beats into music as a mainstay type thing, as well as it just being like hearing horns and guitars and harmonies working in such a way that but it's fun. I know a lot of times when we sometimes hear horns in music, before this time it was more big band stuff. Like you would be thinking of like 50s and late 60s bigger stuff, and Earth, Wind, and Fire made it fun, made it to where it's like you can like. And that's what like funk, R&B and stuff during this time, it made it where it's like, all right, we're taking things that are happening, but we're also finding the joy in it and we're expressing that. We're holding on to the joy in the midst of things and being like, don't forget what we have. We have this. And that's how I take it. So, I mean, you've got September, Boogie Wonderland, After the Love Is Gone.
Let's groove tonight.
Yeah. Share the spice of life. Ooh.
Oh, my gosh.
It's just good.
They are, and you said it, you put it on at a funeral. There is never a wrong time to listen to Earth, Wind, and Fire. I always want to hear them. And it's always cranked all the way up. Let me say this too. Gafar, I don't know if you've watched the Christmas song episode with Randy, but his George, if I'm not mistaken, his number one Christmas song, it features Earth, Wind, and Fire and Meghan Trainor.
Meghan Trainor.
And I'm not even going to lie. Like, it's
a
pretty
groove. I have heard that song. I was like, dang, I'm actually impressed. This is good.
So, yeah, they're a great band. Kirk, what's your thoughts?
There are oftentimes I go, Alexa, play Earth, Wind, and Fire. Like, it's I don't do that to a ton of bands, but I do it to them because it just puts you in a good mood. I will say this. They had back when The Voice first started, there was a guy that was on there. He was one of my favorite, white guy. He looks like a hippie school teacher or something like that. He looks like he needs to be on some kind of like Welcome Back Kotter, right? Yeah, welcome back. Well, anyways, he looks like he needs to be on something like that. And he sings 21st of December, or sorry, 21st of September. Yep, there you go. Boom, boom. But he sings that, and dude, I love it, and I love it so much when he played it that it sparked this thing in me that like I always wanted to listen to it. So I started following him. Nicholas David's his name, and he's like a music teacher. He's freaking amazing, and I listened to that song by him, which is it's not that it's any better. It's just a really cool groove. Probably once a week at least. And that's been on my jam for a long time. My kids love it. My wife, two of my nieces and my spiritual son Xavier all have birthdays right around the 21st of December. Or gosh, I said it again. The 21st of September. Man, I've too much of this Ozzy Osbourne funkadelic going on. Anyways, they all have birthdays around there, and so that's another thing. When we sing that song, sometimes I go, "Do you remember the 23rd of September?" Because that's all their birthdays, or 22nd of September. Yeah, it's a big part of my family. I love this song. I love this pick, and it's probably one of the few rock or anti-rock, that are even on my list, because 70s is so heavy on the rock side.
Yeah.
It's definitely there. But great pick, man. Good, love it. Andy, where you going, man?
Like I said before, my George and my Link are cemented in. There's no way around it. And my Link, Gafar, I'm going to crush more with you, and I'm going to go, Led Zeppelin, baby. Led Zeppelin is where it's at. I could look 1968 to 1980, actually a pretty short career. Obviously ended with tragedy with John Bonham's passing. But just to imagine what could have been had they been able to continue with that. Mm-hmm. But okay, so there are some hits that are bangers that came out late 60s. I didn't even count them in this list. Okay, but let me just give you this list: Black Dog, Immigrant Song, Stairway, Kashmir, In the Evening, All My Love, The Rain Song, In My Time of Dying, No Quarter, Houses of the Holy, Fool in the Rain, Dancing Days, Dire Maker, which actually I found out is actually Jermaker is how you say it. But anyway, the song remains the same. Over the Hills and Far Away, Misty Mountain Hop, Rock and Roll, When the Levee Breaks, just to name a few. Okay, like three. Led Zeppelin is 70s. Like that, when I say that there's a culture to the 70s, like if you were to look it up in the dictionary, it's a picture of Robert Plant. Like that's 1970s, right? Like this is
hair open,
chest is out, like everything, like that, bell bottoms, whatever he's rocking. So we want to say that, like, again, from a musicality standpoint, and we talked about this last year because rightfully so, almost every member of the band could make a Rushmore of that specific musician. Obviously, John Bonham is my favorite drummer of all time.
That was your George. He was my lane.
The most influential to me. He's gonna be He's gonna be top 3 for every drummer you talk to. I mean, just or else you don't. Anyway, but so you have that. You got Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page should be one of your top guitarists of all time. Talk about the innovative nature that he had, like playing it with the bow of the violin, like what in the world, and like the double neck guitar, like all of those things that you see. So Robert Plant, I mean, come on, the dude's vocals go unmatched. I mean, they're amazing, fantastic. The Immigrant Song, right? Like, I mean, just listen to that, like, and just hear all those other things that he does. And then, okay, let's talk about one of the most underrated basses of all time, John Paul Jones. Come on, man, like he doesn't get a lot of love, and I think that it's the same thing. Rush, like you said, right? Like Geddy Lee, Neil Peart, obviously they're going to be top 2 in their game, right? Alex Lifeson just happens to be in a band with those two. I think it's the same thing with John Paul Jones. Like he just happened to be in the band with the greatest of all time. Like, and in his own right, he is one of the greatest bassists out there. He is solid, does a lot of.
Let me ask you this: do you think someone like John Paul Jones or Alex Lifeson, being around folks like Geddy Lee and Neil Peart and John Bonham, ended up becoming the greatest because of the shoulders they rubbed with? Like their game was elevated? Or do you think if they were to leave those bands this is hypothetical, they were to leave those bands, go somewhere else, they'd still be getting the same?
I still think in their own right, they would be fantastic.
I'm talking about those two. Because those are the two of each band that are
because you listen to it, and like you can go on YouTube and you can look at like isolated tracks of just specific musicians, and if you pull up John Paul Jones and if you pull up Alex Lifeson, you would be like, that dude is freaking amazing. Like, but the fact is that, so gosh, I'll get nerdy here for a minute, but like the drums and bass, the rhythm section of a group, like there's so much that we in our brain, like we hear the drums, it's a little bit more out front, unless the bass line is just ridiculous, like over the top, in the mix. but they work so well together. I think that they're so solid. There's some things that like John Bonham does that I can do on the kit now, but it's not necessarily, it's how innovative he was, how before his time he was, and just the feel that he has. The fact that you can play the beat, okay, when the levee breaks, right? The intro to that, right? Like, it's not a difficult beat, but in one note, I know exactly who it is. And I can hear somebody else play it and try to match it and be like, that's a Bonham lick. Like, or that's very Page, like, any of those things. So I think that the iconic, like, just everything. And to answer your question, I think, again, I don't think overall, unless you're a musician, many people listen to the bass. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Like, that's just not usually the standout. Like,
which we talked a lot about that in the bass show.
In rock music, like, okay, so we moved to funk and we moved to different, even Earth, Wind and Fire kind of stuff, like
slap at a
bass heavy, right? It's a little bit more forward with that kind of stuff. But in rock music, it's there to be the backbone. And I'll tell you this, Led Zeppelin wouldn't be Led Zeppelin without John Paul Jones. With all of the greatness around him, still wouldn't be the same band without him. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent.
Now that you've sucked up all the time, let's keep talking about them, because I'm Crushmore and coming in with my link and coming in with Led Zeppelin with a triple Crushmore. Everything you said, I am so excited that you listed all those songs that I don't have to repeat them. And that's amazing. What I think about them is you don't even have to be a Led Zeppelin fan. Right, you don't even have to know the name of the band. Right,
it's highly recommended that you are a fan.
Yeah, it's not highly, but you know these songs. I don't care who you are. You know these songs. They are played so much in commercials and movies and television, and not to mention the radio. Right, I mean, just like they're everywhere. I mean, you hear Zeppelin everywhere. They use little riffs. They use little whatever. And you were talking about the Bonham lick and all that stuff. Like, I remember right prior to Rushmore even becoming an idea, me and you were sitting on the couch, we're watching YouTube, and you were like, hey, watch this. And then you were trying to show me how innovative Bonham was, right? You're trying to show me some of those things. And I didn't even know any of that. I just knew he was just legit, right? Like, he's really awesome. And still, because I don't have such a musician's ear, some of that stuff you're even talking about, I remember I was like, I don't really see the difference in some of that. But I do since then, because, when you go on YouTube, other things that you've watched have been recommended. And there are so many people that love or talk about this. And because of that, and kind of watching more music or studying different things, I have become even more a Zeppelin fan. But I mean, I didn't need them to. I didn't need it. They were going to be on the mountain regardless. I mean, they are 70s to me. They are. There's a couple bands out there that, and I've mentioned a couple already, but there's only a couple bands when you hear them, you love more than just a single or two. Like, this is a whole discography, right? Like I like the whole set. I'm going to listen to it all. I'm going to sit in that vibe for a little bit. I took up all the time that I need. Gafar, I know how much you love them. We've already hit that. But I don't know if they're not on your mountain. I don't know that you like 70s. You must just not like the 70s
music.
I got like a few more things to say, just real small. But it's also like, after Led Zeppelin have broken up, it's still cool to see everything that they've still done to do with music, or that they do. Like, John Paul Jones is a part of the band, them Crooked Vultures, with Dave Grohl and what's his name from, I can't think of his name, from Queens of Stone Age, lead singer. It's going to hit me later. But then Jimmy Page, who also did that album, not the album, but the video, the recording Might Get Loud, with Jack White and U2, where they discussed a lot of their big hits of guitar, how they even kind of like came up with different stuff. So super influential. And then Robert Plant, who does work like music with Alison Krauss right now, still, like, they do wonderful music. So it's still just like seeing a band that was not only just huge during that time, and even though they've split off and done separate things, they're still successful, and you can still hear the influences of
40, 50 years. I mean, like, it's crazy. It's
huge.
nuts.
So Yeah, that's the last I'll say about
Yeah, I'm waiting for that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Hologram, like John Bonham on the drums. Come on now. They probably have Jason Bonham, which is cool. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
All right. Well, Gafar, we're to the George. We this is the top of the mountain. We're at the pinnacle. This is, we've made it to the summit. Where are you going?
I'm shrinking lower in my seat to show my background.
Yeah.
And now I'm stuck.
I can't see
it. To me,
you must get out the way even more.
Oh, easy. So I'll talk off screen. So to me, the easiest way.
Look how funny that looks. He like went into the background
to describe this album. And it means a lot because it's changed my life. It's like an emotional connection between me and my mom. Stevie Wonder is a incredible songwriter. I mean, incredible musician. During this time, I know that like he's already like kind of, I think, won a few Grammys and stuff. But when this album came out, it was like a double hitter for what R&B was, and has also changed in everything else. Because if you look at this album, there's Sir Duke.
Oh my gosh.
On I Wish, Knocks Me Off My Feet, Pastime Paradise, Isn't She Lovely, Joy Inside My Tears. I'm about to say, and my favorite song on this is the song As, where it's talking like it's a love song that Stevie writes. Isn't she lovely? Just so perfect that it talks about like how long love lasts, what's it mean, what does love look like, until the day that like earth and sky. I can't even remember the lyrics. It's just like, it's such a beautifully written thing. And I think about this because it's like it goes through a lot of stuff of life that a lot of times people were feeling during this time, because we're still in the civil rights time, kind of coming out of that. So there's an expression within Black community and other people who feel this, just songs that kind of represent them. But my mom and I, like at my wedding, we danced to this song. She used to sing the song As over me. So it's just like emotional. Yeah. But Stevie Wonder's music has influenced so many other people. Like today, there's a guy by the name of Corey Henry, another guy by the name, my brain don't fail me now. It's going to hit me later on. It was at the top of my tongue. Anyway, I'm going to hit it later and I'm going to just blurt it out at some point. But hearing like the influence that he has, 76 to now being 2023, and many people like credit a lot of like piano voicings, gospel voicings, harmony, and other things to Stevie Wonder. And I say pinpoint to this, where in the R&B, neo soul, lo-fi hip hop realm that we hear nowadays, many of that is attributed to that album. So that's my number one.
Bro, can I tell you that Sir Duke is one of the greatest songs of all time? Like, I rock out to that song. So there's a few things. Number one, and this may sound funny, I'm a big Muppets fan, and that song just gives me Muppets feels like like I don't know why every time, and then like the all that stuff that happens in it, like I love that song. But I like honestly, like I've known that song for so long, and then I actually like read the lyrics to it, and like how it's like a tribute to like all of like the artists that influence and everything. It's just really cool. Like to anyway, it's great stuff.
Yeah.
Stevie Wonder, so many great things. Obviously, we could talk about him forever. So I love that pick. I'm glad we finally unveiled what your background is. That's always cool. Superstition, though. Did we talk? I know we're not talking album specifically, but like, come on now. Like,
hey,
I just called to say I love you. Like, come on now. That's a great hit. Anyway.
I'm like I said, Pastime Paradise is where Coolio got Gangster's Paradise from. Then where Weird Al got Amish Paradise. Come on, it's like
what about Signed, Sealed, Delivered? Come on,
Delivered. I'm
yours.
Like all these things that we think of are so like normal. It's like
Tears of a Clown.
Pivotal.
I love it.
Pivotal.
He was a part of writing Tears of the Clown for Smokey Robinson, dude. I love that song.
Hey.
Man. So anyways, here's a couple things, man. Stevie Wonder, amazing. Let's not even just talk about, we're kind of poking fun a little bit, but Stevie Wonder was blind. I mean, like, come on, like it's always fun to see like people who have a disability just conquer the world, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. But 27 albums are listed in his discography.
God,
right? 27 albums,
come on,
ranging from 62 to 2005. Not to mention, you have mentioned Gafar, something about his Grammys, right? Mm-hmm. The guy has won 25 Grammys. He has a record set of Best Artist of the Year awards, tied with 3 other people. Taylor Swift being one. I don't even remember the other ones, but he's tied. But he's the only artist to have done it 3 years in a row. That's insane. I mean, he's just an amazing artist. He's a writer. What you said, what he did for civil rights, and what he's done, just stepping out and using his disability, his voice, his microphone to kind of help change the world. I mean, when I think of We Are the World, like he's the voice that I hear first, right? Mm-hmm. He's the one. Like it's the as we start, and he just has a great iconic sound. Yeah. So I love that pick. Great job, man.
I guess I'll go to my George, and I'm going to go with Fleetwood Mac. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not doing it.
Going with Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan. No, that would be in my more of music, those two. But I'm sorry. It's a great songwriter, horrible singer. But we'll continue. My George, it's without a doubt, it is Kiss, the hottest band in the world, Kiss. So, okay, I've shared it plenty of times. As a 9-year-old boy, for the first time seeing these guys in makeup spit fire and spit blood and like just the personas and the stage show, it was like, what in the world is happening? This is the coolest thing ever. I have grown such a love for it. I listen, I've got the man tattooed on my body. Like, I don't know how else to not this was obviously my George, my number one, right? I've got the Kiss shirt on right now. Hey, I want to do this though. Okay, so let me give you the facts, and then I've actually got some props to show you guys. So, 1973. This is actually the only band that I've mentioned today that was formed in the 70s. The other ones were late 60s. But here's and they're still currently touring on a farewell tour. So it's been like
they've been farewelling for about 30 years.
Listen. 1998 was their first farewell tour. So take that for what it is. Wow. We have people who are listening to the show who weren't even born when they started their farewell tour. Anyway, we'll continue. But 1973 to the present, here's the list of just 70s music. Like they have so many great 80s hits too, and 90s hits to me too. Anyway, just 70s. 100,000 Years, Shout It Out Loud, Beth, God of Thunder, Cold Gin, Love Gun, Deuce, Black Diamond, Detroit Rock City, Rock and Roll All Night, I Was Made for Loving You, Sure Know Something, I Want You, Calling Dr. Love, I Stole Your Love, Hard Luck Woman, Got to Choose, Firehouse, Going Blind, Nothing to Lose. Did I already say that? Doesn't matter. Come On and Love Me, Parasite, Hotter Than Hell, Shock Me, Do You Love Me, She, Strutter. That's a greatest hits album right there. And I'm only pulling songs from 1973 to 1979. We're talking 6 years of that's crazy.
That's a lot.
They get so much hate in the world of like critical, like, okay, I'll say this. For every other band that I mentioned, musicality and everything, you can throw that out the window. They're not the best in that side of things. I mean, and they'll admit it, right? Gene Simmons has one of my favorite quotes. He says, a lot of bands wanted to be the Beatles. We wanted to be Coca-Cola. Like it was totally, it's a whole thing, right? And they're amazing. They're my inspiration to pick up any kind of instrument. Again, like I said, 8, 9 years old when I first saw them. just amazing to see that. But I want to show you guys a few things. So I've shown you some of my stuff before, but I've got a couple. The
comic
green
books.
screen's going to throw me off here, but look, I got a couple Kiss comic books right here. That's fun stuff. I talked about back in former days, I used to partake of things I shouldn't have taken of, but I did. I have an incense burner. Check this sucker out. Look how cool that is, huh? It's all their faces on his bass guitar. Over here to the side, I can't. Can I show this? There's a lamp over there. I don't know if you could see that, but there's a Kiss lamp that's happening over there. What else we got? What else we got here? Let's show the rest of our stuff. Let's show it off. I've got the Kiss Pez dispensers. How you like that? How you like them? I got the Kiss action figures from the Psycho Circus series of McFarlane toys here. We showed that off when we talked about music. All kinds of stuff. Ace Frehley happening there. Paul Stanley. We got Peter Criss right here, which is all green because he's just green, so you can't really see him. And then who else? Oh yeah, we got Gene Simmons rocking right here. Got all kinds of stuff, man. Talk about merchandise. Talk about hitting all the senses. Oh, and I've got a framed artwork of the whole band of Kiss just hanging out in my house, right? Because it's crazy. I love Kiss, obviously, so much with all this stuff that I have. While musically, they're not going to be considered the greatest musicians of all time, they put out great pop rock hits. They just do. They're great stuff. We talk about early shock rock, with the makeup and the stage show and everything that they do, what that has inspired moving on. We talk, Slipknot and Mudvayne, all that stuff. I'd said Black Sabbath was very early predecessors of that, but also they did that. There is music though that they have that if you can get past that whole stage show, because in the 80s, the makeup was gone. Obviously, there was still a stage show because it was the 80s and it was glam and it was all that kind of stuff. But they had to depend a little bit more on their music. They have some B-side or C-side hits even that are out there. There's an album that was put out in 1997 that was called, it's like the Final Sessions. It was really cool. It was with Bruce Kulick and Eric Singer, and it's very grunge like their music. So they span different kinds of genres and they've stayed relevant all of these years. I could go on forever talking about Kiss, but man, I've seen them a couple times and it's everything it's hyped up to be. The show is amazing. You are entertained from the beginning, from the curtain, before the curtain drop to the last song. It is, gosh, they're just so amazing. I love Kiss. They will forever be my number one. They're going to be my number one band. Like, we didn't even have to put a decade on this, and they're just going to be up there for me. So I love them. Curious to get y'all's thoughts on it. I know, Kirk, we've had conversations.
I mean, we've talked about Kiss. Kiss to me is great theater. I mean, they are a personification of rock. They are what you would think of when you're like, hey, let's start a 70s rock band. You go, do you want to, play like Led Zeppelin? Or do you want to put face paint on, right? I mean, like, these are the two guys that like defined a generation. And this is another one of those bands that are very polarizing. You're talking about parents back in Ozzy with, biting off heads. I mean, they didn't want him to go to these concerts. They're Satan's army, right? Like, these guys are
Satan service.
Yeah, these guys are so whatever, right? And it's all just this shtick, right? It's all this like this whatever. And they had people freaking out about it. Like, this is when, like, I'd be curious, like, if Kiss came out today, right? Like today with internet and whatever, if they could have even have been as big, right? Because you would have started reading up on them like immediately. Like look at some of the bands that try and do it now. It doesn't really just roll over. Back then, the internet's kind of still way out, but like the way like news travels is word of mouth. I went to that Kiss concert last night. They were all painted, and guy's tongue is all the way down to the floor, and the fire's going everywhere. He's got a freaking crazy guitar, and I mean, it's just like there was this mythology, if you will, about Kiss. And I think that's one of the reasons you actually kind of fell in love with them, Andy, was kind of that whole lore of just the face paint and the coolness. And I mean, you saw the action figures you got. They they were more than a band. They are definitely more than a band. And again, another reality television show, right? Like
Family Jewels, love that one.
let me just say this. This one is better than the other one, in my opinion.
I'll agree with you, and it's why
I think this one's way better. Not even because that's your band, but yeah, I really enjoyed Gene Simmons. I mean, like he's an interesting fellow, right? And then he's also done the movies, which they weren't all great, but he's done a few. And yeah, he's just Kiss is a cool band.
I think my first introduction to Kiss was through Tony Hawk's Underground.
Nice.
Like I think that's the one. It's either that or Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, but there's a level that you can actually unlock a Kiss concert that you get to see it at. And it played I like party or I don't know, rock and roll all night and stuff. Yeah. And that's what
you just reminded me of something.
What is it?
The Kiss Demon from wrestling.
Thank you. WCW, man.
WCW. Like, I mean, talk about a personification. This guy decided to be a wrestler of a band. Dude, and he ended up being MVP too. That guy was an awesome wrestler. But anyways.
It's just cool how their reputation precedes them in different ways that like
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, I was like, there's another one that I remember them being in like a cartoon show, and I was
Family
like,
Guy.
Thank you. That's the one where they save Christmas.
Yeah,
I just watched that.
Well, Andy quotes that pretty. There's actually been a few clips of them in Family Guy.
I ordered my Grand Slam with sausage.
What's the quote by the wife? Anybody who's watched our show for any amount of time, anybody that spent any amount of time with you knew this was it. I would have been shocked if it wasn't. I would have been really shocked if it wasn't.
Yeah, I would leave the show if I forgot.
Yeah, so here we go. I'm going to go with another controversial pick, and that's just me because I'm going to be controversial, but I've realized and even when I changed it with my first one, and I pulled them out for Rosie, right? I was moving it from 70s to 80s. And then obviously I could have done that with Rush, but I don't consider Rush. I still consider Rush a 70s band, even though, yeah, this band, I also could move to the 80s, but I'm not because I consider them a 70s band. They have a ton of hits in the 70s. I've seen this band. This is the only band on my Rushmore that I've seen play, but it's on my Rushmore of greatest bands. He was on one of my greatest singers, and I'm going none other than Journey. So they were in 1968. They started. They have hit after hit after hit in the 70s, and then they have mega hit after mega hit in the 80s.
Yeah.
But I know my 80s bands already, and Journey wouldn't be it. They just wouldn't be it. Journey to me is so early in the 80s. As I was a young boy, just like Rush, I would still consider them 70s as a growing up kid. Because hear me out. I know, Andy, you're like a 90s kid. So when you look back at like the Journeys and the Rushes and some of these other bands, you're like, man, they were actually in the 80s. They were actually in the 70s, right? Like me, when I looked at those guys at 10 years old, right, they, to me, were so far like when I was a little kid that they had to be in the 70s. And here's the thing. Many of their hits came out in 81, 82, 83, 84, right? But I've got a list of banging hits from the 70s, which is, Wheel in the Sky, Feeling That Way, Anytime, Lights is a freaking jam, Just the Same Way, Lovin', Touchin', Squeezin'. These are all in the 70s. Steve Perry to me is in the he was on the mountain of my vocalists. Journey, I even like the new guy that kind of plays with Journey now. He's a young fella, and he's really good. But Steve Perry, even when he went and did his, solo stuff, I think he's got a great voice. And this is when you talk about classic rock, this was one of the first bands I started listening to as far as classic rock for me. I had their album, their the greatest hits, and I played it on repeat. And I didn't mention that in my criteria, but for me, a part of the criteria all month is going to be, would I buy a greatest hits of them, and how many songs could actually fit on this thing, right? And all of these guys are just mega hits. So I'm going with Journey as my number one. And again, you can at me like you like to say, Andy, but they're a 70s band to me, and they just wouldn't ever crack my 80s. My 80s bands are pretty locked. Matter of fact, even the guy that I'm moving over, they might not crack it, but they should.
Okay. I get where you're coming from. I get it, but I don't get it because they are 80s. I mean, I know they're in 70s. I get it, and they have hits. But if I'm to Google, if I'm just going to say Journey 80s hits, it's like bang, 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 bang. For me, that's personal. But again, Rushmore's are.
Well, I mean, they had that one big album, right? They had the one big album that has like that one just took them to another level. Open Arms, Faithfully, all those basically come from that same 2-year span. But prior to that, they were still at the top of the game to me. And so, anyways, they're going to make one of these mountains, and I'm gonna make a way to get them on the mountain, and they wouldn't make my next one. So
appreciate it.
I'm bending the rules.
What's your thoughts on Journey, Gafar?
To be honest, I listen to Foreigner a little bit more than Journey. So it's like, besides
Foreigner is a good pick.
I was like, but it's like, Don't Stop Believing is the first one, and after that, I was like, do I know many of the songs? And I was like, I do remember about Steve Perry's name on like how he did a solo stuff.
You would know a ton more once you've heard them.
I feel like, but it's like I just recall Foreigner songs off the top of my head, so I'm just like, okay. I'm like, I have stuff to listen to. That's what I'm like. All right,
nice. I will say, Wheel in the Sky is a banger, though. That's one of
all those ones I just mentioned. Those top 5 right there, 6. Lights is a banger. I love that song, and Anytime is also a banger.
Yeah, I know that one. Anyway.
Yeah, and so, but to me, I go back and I look at, would this have played on 95.7, right? And this is on there. I mean, before 80s was even on there. Like, this was it. Like, it was on there because they're classic rock to me, and they're 70s. But you can put them in any one. You could put many of our bands in any era. That I just consider them there, even without looking at the songs. Actually, a lot of the songs that we're even talking about are kind of shocking that they were in 81, 83. I would have bet you they were in 1980 or 79. But even then, I still am going to honor. I mean, they're on my Rushmore bands for sure, and we've talked about this. And several of the bands that are coming next week are on the Rushmore of my bands. So,
yeah, great picks. Look, we have made it through all of our top 4s. Comment. Let us know, where did we mess up? Do you agree with some controversial picks that we have? Are you cool with it? Did we miss something? I know we missed stuff, but that's okay, because we're going to give you 12 fresh ones, what we like to call our Benjamins. Let's get it. Rushmore community, here we go. Benjamin time. This is our honorable mentions. No Crushmores. Brand new 12. Guaranteed to have 12 non-matching picks. I know that some of mine have already been eliminated because of the Rushmores that we mentioned before, and I'm sure some of yours have as well. Let's get started with our next in line. Just missed the mountain. And we'll do this snake style. We'll start with you, Gafar. Where are we going for your first Benjamin?
I'm going to say Elton John, specifically thinking Goodbye Yellow Brick Road.
Goodbye
in my head, but just that
another guy that could go 80s too.
Yeah,
Very much so.
he's coming off mine. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna go with my first one on here. How did we get through this without? And this could be multiple. My first Benjamin off the board, Aerosmith.
Oh, see, yeah. I leaned on them for next week.
Yeah.
And they might show up next week, but little gamesmanship here. I'm gonna go with CCR. Nice. I'm gonna go with CCR, and I'm gonna come in right behind that. CCR, great band, dude. Their greatest hits.
It only lasted till 1972, though, and that's the only reason I was like,
yeah, but get out.
Great hits.
Right. And then I'm gonna come in and hot again, man, with the Eagles.
Nice. Dang it! I was hoping they'd last. I hope they'd last. They're going away quick.
Gamesmanship. I knew. I'm like,
My next pick, and I already said I have a tattoo of Gene Simmons here, but my other one, I actually have a tattoo not of this person, but of a song that he sang, one of the greatest of all time. And I'm going to diversify a little bit. I've been all rock so far.
I've seen
a singer-songwriter with James Taylor.
Yeah. That's good.
All right, so
you get back-to-back, Scafar.
I'm trying to decide, but they're all in there. So I'm gonna say one early forefathers of punk rock. We're gonna go like the Ramones.
Oh man, taking them.
Wow,
gosh, good
one.
one.
The Ramones, and then I'm gonna follow that up. I'm gonna follow it up with a really good one, Leonard Skinner.
Good one.
Yeah.
All right.
I was trying to figure out if I was going to go them right there or not.
I was like, let me just say it first.
All right, my next one here, third Benjamin. I love this group. It's, for whatever reason, kind of polarizing at times, but I mean, we want to talk about sneaky hits. Like they have so many songs that you're like, oh wait, they did that too. I'm going with the Steve Miller Band.
Ooh. All right. All right. I'm gonna go with your favorite band, Andy, The Who.
Oh, you can take him.
I know. We going back to last year with Kate.
Yeah.
Was it Kate? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm gonna go with The Who, and I'm gonna finish off really strong with AC/DC.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm glad.
Pokey! Put your right foot in.
Real quick story about my last one. Here's my last Benjamin. First time I ever saw Kiss, Voodoo Fest here, 2009-ish time or whatever. The only other band at Voodoo that I was really dead set on going to see played at the exact same time as Kiss. Whoever scheduled this, horrible scheduling, and I wasn't going to not see Kiss. Just killing myself today for not doing this. My last Benjamin, George Clinton and the Parliament Funkadelic. P-Funk.
Don't wear the shirt of the band you're going to see.
Love P-Funk. Love it.
I feel like this one would be really influential in the 80s, but since I'm not doing the 80s, I'm going to say Van Halen.
Van Halen, nice.
Van Halen.
Counts though, 70's. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. That album was at the end, so I was like, the rest of them, yeah, that's fine.
Oh, man, great ones. Well, there we go. There is our Benjamins. I had two more left over on my list that I could have mentioned. The rest have been eliminated, just devoured, taken away. So, man, Gafar, thank you for being on today, man. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
What I love is that everybody, aside from Stevie Wonder, and every single band that we named, except for Stevie Wonder, was on my list.
Gafar, dude, it's been so fun having you on the show. Great time hanging out.
Thank you.
We're going to have Gafar on later in video games too, I think, right?
I think so. So I'm ready to talk some gaming.
Yes, it's going to be fun. Hey, just a reminder again, if you're anywhere near the Louisiana area, or if you want to travel, come on, travel down. We'll put all the information, St. Tammany Collectors Con. We will be out there doing some live stuff. It'll be a blast. Come get some collectibles. Come hang out. Come share some stories. Have some fun times.
Maybe we'll do the hokey pokey.
I hope we don't.
Sorry.
Man, we're excited. We're just getting Music March started off next week. Join us.
Already controversial, but that's okay. That's okay.
But that's how we are. That's how we do things. Kirk, any last thoughts before we?
It's going to be a great month. Next week, we're going to have my soon-to-be 14-year-old daughter in her birthday week. She's going to be on. Her birthday's going to be on Friday of next week, and she's going to come on. And you would think 14, she's going to do, top today music. No, she's going to come in with her 80s bangers. And look, you're going to be shocked. She knows what she's talking about. She probably even knows better than me. She might actually name Journey next week. So there you go. But we'll have Carson on, and then we're going to finish this month out with two of our besties, right? We're going to finish off with some original gangsters with the 90s with Paul and 2000s with Dennis. And so it's going to be a great month finishing off Music March. And so stick with us, hang around, drop the comments down in the bottom, and share. Tell people about the show. Come see us at the con. And man, Andy, what is it? What time is it now? What are we supposed to do? How we always end this thing?
Let's end it like we always do. This is the Rushmore Show, where it's all about your
top four
and nothing more.
Peace.